Hi guys, welcome to the No Bullshit Gymcast podcast. My special guest today is Martin Young. Martin, welcome to the podcast. For everyone
Hi,
out
Chris.
there,
Thank you for having me.
that's all right, mate, not a problem. For everyone out there, I've met Martin a few months ago, well, 6, 7 months ago. We met through a business mentorship. Martin, tell everyone about yourself and why you have become who you are in this industry today.
Who am I, and why should people listen to me? Yes, there's a good long story here. Everybody, pull up a chair, get a cup of tea, settle in. This is how it goes. Yeah, I'm Martin Young. I am a personal trainer. I work specifically with people in midlife, around the age of 50 and above, who have essentially neglected themselves. They've focused on their business, their family, their life, and they find themselves in midlife where they didn't think that they would be from a health point of view. So that's who I coach and that's who I work with. And it didn't start out like that. It was a completely different starting point. So if I cast the net back 25 years, then I actually am a qualified architect in the UK. So I started off in a completely different industry, and I worked in the construction industry for the better part of 2 decades. I initially worked as an architect in private practice, and I was fortunate to work in the UK, in America, across Europe. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. Then I went into commercial property development. I worked for a large supermarket retailer based in the UK and worked for them both in the UK and internationally for 7 years. And I then took up various property management roles in facilities management companies and construction companies in the UK thereafter. And it got to around the pandemic. I think this was a turning point for quite a lot of
A lot of
people
people.
in their life. And my particular circumstance at the time was that I was working for a healthcare company, and I was their head of construction. And obviously, during the pandemic, working for a healthcare company, it was very challenging. And a lot of people do talk about the impact that work had on their mental health, um, particularly at that time. But that really did have an impact on me because of the circumstance that I was working in and obviously the environment that everybody was living through at the time. So I gave it all up. Becoming a personal trainer was something that I'd always thought about doing. But honestly, I thought that that ship had sailed. I thought that I was, how do you put it, past it. I thought that my opportunity had come and gone. But I looked upon the pandemic as an opportunity to retrain. I was that person standing in their lounge with two bottles of water and a broomstick, um, doing exercise like everybody else was. And it reminded me of it reminded me of the activities and the things that brought me joy. And I just wanted, at that point in my life, I just wanted to focus on things that I enjoyed and things that, brought me a bit of peace and happiness. So I took a course, I qualified as a personal trainer, and I started work online. So, given the nature of what we were living through at the time, I had no choice but to work online. So, I developed a business in partnership with other people through referrals from other people, and I built up a client base. And I've now worked with around 100 clients, um, uh, specifically online. I do some in-person work, but that is on a more one-to-one specific circumstance basis. The majority of my work is done online, and it focuses very much on giving people um, information and support and accountability. That's a big thing um, to people in midlife who now want to improve their levels of fitness and well-being. Because for many of them, to go back to my analogy, many of them feel past it and they're concerned that time is passing them by and they want to do something about it.
That's cool. That's
So
cool.
yeah, that's my story.
That's the cool story. So obviously I know that you go and do high rocks, tough mudder. Yeah, we won't mention your ankles at this moment in time. Guys, if I could show it, it'd be X-rated. My
This
podcast,
is there's a trigger warning at this point in the
there'd be trigger
conversation.
warnings everywhere. The internet be like, "Oh my God, what's he done? He's trying to hang himself by the ankles." You got, as they say, sliced and diced with a tough
Yeah,
mudder the other weekend, wasn't it? How did you do in that,
yeah.
by the way?
Finished it. So in the last 12 months, so just in terms of context for this, a couple of years ago, I was particularly unwell. I suffered from an autoimmune condition and I had to be hospitalized and I was treated for it. And then after I recovered from that, and I'm very grateful to the NHS for helping me with that, um, I decided that I was going to rebuild myself again, second time round,
Yeah,
and I decided to do a lot of these sort of performance events and elite sports events. So in the last 12 months, I've done two high rocks and a tough mudder, just for fun. So yeah,
bonkers.
it was great fun.
Absolute bonkers. So obviously, like the reason I've got you on here today is because you've got different perspective. We're similar ages, and this isn't all about just bodybuilding, etc., in the industry or within gyms, because obviously there is. I find the industry is so unregulated. It's unregulated across the board from mental health experts now to nutritionists to, oh, yes, I am a particular gym PT. I can do every functional movement under the sun. I can, pull my trousers over my head whilst doing handstands, for instance.
Mhm,
There's all that sort of thing going on. So, that's why I brought you on is to get your experience, your knowledge of how you've dealt with that sort of side of things. Now,
mhm.
what's your perspective of the industry and what are your frustrations personally that you've experienced, like either online or within doing one-to-one within a gym industry like space, shall we say?
Mhm. I think, first and foremost, I would say that I have the utmost respect for coaches and trainers who dedicate their life and their style of training to one particular form. So, if I take bodybuilding, for example, that's not what I do. It's not what I specialize in. And I have the utmost respect for people who dedicate their time and effort to doing that because I know from the training and qualifications that I have that it does take a lot of effort. So I have a lot of respect for that. Um, I do think there's clearly a lot of noise in the online training space. There's a lot of people who are uh, putting themselves out there in that space. And good luck to them. I want everybody to do well. There's clearly a lot of people in the world, so there's a lot of people that need help. But I think that would be my comment, as it were, that um, I think in my experience, I want to approach my coaching from the perspective of I am the person that I coach, or I was the person that I coach. I am in midlife. So, for context, I just celebrated my 49th birthday. I'm now on the build up to 50.
I
Um,
thought you were
so,
21 again, mate. Sorry. Damn.
pardon, pardon me.
I thought you were 21 again. Oh, that was me thinking, damn, I'm going to have my next birthday. I'm going to be
It's
21.
the It's the hairline. It's the hairline. So I am 49. I'm on the countdown to the big 50, and I think it's really important. My personal view is that it's really important to be able to identify clearly with the people that you feel called to serve. So um, I'm not for your average 21-year-old who wants to go and build muscle and develop a six pack and this, that, the next thing. I do have a six pack, but that's my choice. For many people who are in their um, late 40s, early 50s, and beyond, um, improving their general levels of fitness, being consistent, having better mobility, improving their chances of longevity. These are the things that I hear from my clients and the people that I speak to who come to me for advice and assistance.
Mhm.
They're not so driven by aesthetics. Yes, now let's be clear. Everybody wants to look good in the mirror. Everybody wants to look good for their partner. Everybody wants to feel that degree of confidence. And I certainly have clients that talk about that aspect of their life and wanting to improve their life. But very often the conversation focuses on how do I improve my health? How do I incorporate these things on a day-to-day basis into my life? How can I improve my chances of health and longevity in midlife and beyond? Those are the things. So I think it's not necessarily a frustration with the industry, but I think I can only talk about it from a positive perspective in that I feel drawn to help people who I was like become the more the healthier and more um, the healthier and fitter version of themselves. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. So obviously, your perspective of the industry, obviously, like in comparables, and I'm not trying to compare apples and oranges because you and I are
Mm.
two different coaches, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got 22 years in the industry. You've got probably 5, 6 years in the industry,
Hmm.
but you know, there's so many variables between you and I. But just imagine what the variables are between a 21-year-old or an 18-year-old and myself, or an 18
Mm.
year old and yourself, right? But
Mm.
in terms of the knowledge factor,
Mm.
an 18-year-old might have the same knowledge factor as you have because of the time
Yeah.
factor that you've been in the industry, right? So
Yeah.
this is what I mean by the frustrations and the perspectives of the industry. Now, obviously,
Hmm.
we can bring into, obviously the fact of you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook. I know you do a lot of work within LinkedIn. Do you
Hmm.
find that, but you've also, like you said previously, just off air, we were talking about TikTok. You get a lot back from
Hmm.
TikTok. Now, I've never gone down the TikTok route because you might call me old fashioned. I'm a bit too old for that sort of shit, but you know what I mean.
I'm young and trendy. I'm young. I'm cool. I'm with down with the kids. Yeah.
Well, like I said, you're 21 again, mate. I'm just the old one. So what I'm trying to say is, do you get as much out of doing, say, the TikTok sort of stuff as you would do the LinkedIn stuff? Because, i.e., to me, they're two different age ranges of people.
Hmm.
In what my understanding is, you've got high-end executives on one end of the stick, and you've got like anything from a 10-year-old plus watching TikTok. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Hmm.
Do you not find that the information is so far stretched that it's so diluted?
I think you have to, as a coach, as an online coach predominantly, I think it's important that you understand the differences between the platforms and how to use them. And I don't profess to be an expert at it. I'm still learning as I go as well. The overriding thing I would say with social media is that if you want to use it to support the development of your business, just start, because I promise you the videos that you do now will look terrible in a year's time. But if you wait a year to think that you're going to be better, you won't be. So just get on with it. If people are more than welcome to go and look at my social media. If you scroll back a year, there's some absolute nonsense in there. But it's my journey, and it's the path that I've been on. But I think it's important for people to understand what social media is. So for me, social media is a shop window. I don't get, I have had people come to me via social media and say, "You're great. Can we have a call? I'd like to work with you." And that's great. And I follow up with that. And I've had clients that way. But generally speaking, it takes a number of touch points through your social media or through your shop window, as it were, for people to actually be enticed enough to come in and buy. So, for example, I use Instagram very much as a shop window. If you want to see what I do, how I do it, who I am, and get to know me,
Hmm.
go and look at Instagram. That's where that all is. If you want to search things that I have done and see what they are, so for example, I specialize in workouts that can be done in 30 minutes because people in my age range tend to be short on time and have a lot of family and work pressures. So a lot of my work is done in 30 minutes. And if you want to search through that content, TikTok is a great social platform for that because TikTok is effectively a visual search engine. So you can look for things in that sphere. LinkedIn is more of a networking platform. It's a place where you make connections. And I think with all of social media, my word of caution to anybody in this industry, based on what I see and what I've experienced, is that don't expect that just because you're on social media, you will suddenly attract lots of people. There is the human factor as well. We live in a world where AI and the algorithm are, they are an impact. They are impacting and they are influencing all of these tools that we have. But it doesn't take away from you as the individual. And I think the real golden nugget that I have, to go back to your earlier point, that you have an 18-year-old or a 21-year-old that will have the same technical knowledge as I do, and despite the age difference, but the thing that I bring, which is completely different to the vast majority, I believe, is the quality of engagement that I will have with a person one to one. I come with, I'm 20. How do they put it? I'm 21 with 26 years experience, or whatever the number is. I've 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 put in the time, I've got the experience, and I think being able to hold a quality of conversation with people who are middle-aged, they appreciate that quality of engagement and that quality of interaction. But your average 18 or 21-year-old will look at me as their father, in some instances, their grandfather. I don't look like many people's grandfather, but at the same time, it's like that is the age range that I'm in, and therefore they may not have um, that personal connection with me. But it's different things for different people. There is room for all coaches in the industry.
I, I sort of agree with you on that, but I sort of disagree with you on that at the same time.
Oh, good.
A little bit controversial. I have to be. I just think that being in the industry 22 years, there isn't enough regulation of the industry. Like, for
Hmm.
instance, especially with social media, there is nothing saying. Like, for instance, this week with my clients, I had to educate a client yesterday with regards to just reading labels, on the
Hmm.
back of a protein bottle. And it was, oh, look at this. I found this. Is this all right? Sent me a photo. I said, okay, because it's got 20 grams of protein on it. Yeah. I
I,
said,
I,
have
I,
you read the back of it? No. Okay. Take a photo of
mm,
it. So he called me back later that evening, last night. And I said to him, I said, hey mate, can you just bring up the photo? And he's laughing. And I'm like, I'm not here to bollock you. I'm here just to educate you, mate. He goes, yeah. I said, so it's got 1 gram of fat in it, right? I said, yeah. He's like, okay. I said, what's the first line underneath the fats? He was like, it's the saturated fats. I said, oh, that's got 0.8 grams of saturated fat in that 1 gram, hasn't it? How do you know that? Because I've read the bottle.
says it on the label.
He goes,
Says it on the
I
label.
said, I said, what's the next line down? He goes, carbs. Oh, it's got 19.6 grams of carbs in it. What? This is not even funny. I said, yeah. What's the next line under the carbs?
Of which sugars?
It's just sugars. I said, there's 12.4 grams of sugar in this bad boy. Yeah, what about it?
Mm.
But it's got 1 gram of fat. It's great. It's 20 grams of protein. I said, go up into into the ingredients, the whole ingredients, right? Yeah. So what's the actual protein percentage of the whole bottle of in here protein powder, right? Of whey protein. 3.2% of it
Mm.
on a 380 ml bottle. How does that work out to be 20 grams? It doesn't.
I think I think the point that you make is a valid one in the sense that there's no regulation in the industry in that. Social media, but then having said that, I don't believe that that's necessarily the fault of the personal training industry. That is social media's misrepresentation of the diet industry and food. So again, I can only speak for myself. Personal trainers are not nutritionists. I think
No.
that's a really important
Okay,
point.
okay. So,
There are a lot.
we'll agree with you on that. We'll agree with you on that, Martin. PTs are not nutritionists, right? How many people, how many PTs do you personally know? Okay. Okay. We won't mention the mentorship we were on, okay, that we worked with, but how many people on that mentorship that we saw on there, the hundreds of them, how many of them are claiming they're writing nutrition programs out for their clients are actually qualified?
So I think we need to be quite careful here because uh, I it would be wrong of me to comment on other people's qualifications when I don't know what they are
Well,
and other people's
exactly.
claims when I don't know what they're making. All I can say is that I know that, for example, I am a qualified nutritionist as well as a personal trainer. So I know that I am qualified to give nutritional advice to people as part of their program and as part of their plan. I think the industry, you do see a lot of people on social media talking about here's what I had for breakfast and here's what I had for lunch and here's what I ate in a day, and so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that it's right for the client and the individual. And I think there is a pressure placed upon people who are not in the fitness industry that they somehow believe that if they eat that,
Yeah.
that it will work for them. And that's not the case. And I
Again,
think that is a misrepresentation of the industry. But I think that um, it's important that as coaches, we educate people on how to incorporate food and nutritional advice into their day-to-day life. And I use my language quite carefully because I'm talking about nutritional advice. And there's a difference between advice and being prescriptive. I think
exactly.
that's
Yeah,
important for people to
and this
understand.
is where I find the frustration within the industry and the BS of the industry is, like you say, I'm having my 10,000 calorie challenge today. I'm walking around six packed up, do, whatever. Right. Joe Blogs walks down the street. He's watching it on Instagram. Oh my God, see this coach? He looks phenomenal. I'm going to go and eat 10,000 calories. That's what I mean by the industry portrays one thing or gives information out as another or says they're qualified, whatever, but they're not. And this is where this regulation, I feel, has to come into play. It's the same with training. I've had a client who went and trained with a pole dancer. Qualified pole dancer, got nothing against it. Pole dancing, I think it's an awesome thing to do. It's a freaking hard thing to do, and I've got a lot
Mhm.
of respect for them. But don't start going and training someone when you don't know their physiological breakdown of their body whatsoever, what they've been training, how they've been training, or any of the above. That's where I get really frustrated, the crossovers. But if you had to change one thing in the industry, yourself, the biggest bugbear for Martin Young, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good one. The biggest bugbear that I have with the industry. Um, I think regulation is important. I think that is something that should be looked at. Um, the thing that's going through my head is that as an architect,
Mm,
so I'm that as well, although I don't practice as an architect, I can still call myself an architect because I got the qualification, I got the certificate, it hangs on my wall. That's something that I have done in my past. It's not who I am, but
Mhm.
it's something that I'm qualified to talk about. So I think perhaps having that quality, personal trainers are certainly qualified. And again, I do want to be clear on that, that to call myself and yourself a personal trainer, we have done qualifications and what have you. But then there's degrees of qualification. There's levels of qualification that you go through that people can work with. I know from having given the client base that I work with, they are more likely to experience ill health and problems in later life. And therefore, I know that I'm qualified to work with general practitioners or GPs to take referrals from GPs of their patients. I have that level of qualification. But again, that's something that I've done. So I think it's important. I think there should be proper regulation of that. I think at the end of the day, this is perhaps me on my moral high ground a little bit, but I think it's incumbent upon the coach themselves to do the right thing and to make it clear to people who they are, what they can do, and the service that they offer. And I think certainly in the online world and the social media has opened up a platform where you could effectively go onto social media and call yourself a coach. You could
Yeah.
call yourself a fitness enthusiast. And I think that probably needs some form of regulation in order that people are clear who they're working with and what they're doing.
See, I can remember back in the early days before I'd done my doctor's, referral qualification
Mm.
and my sports rehabilitation qualification, all the above,
Tick.
right? Is if I had something major going on with a client that I couldn't do, I would refer them on. But I think the pressure of obviously everyday life, making money, etc., etc., etc. Now, people take on stuff that they're not actually qualified for. And that's where it gets
Mm.
a little bit confusing and a little bit, oh no, I'll just do that. It doesn't matter. It's like I'll go back like 6 years. I had a girl who came up to me and when I was back in Oz, she was like 18. She's like she suffered from eating disorder, had been on certain amount of calories for like 5 6 years prior to this. And she took on a very famous online coach in Australia as her coach. Coach didn't do any research on her, didn't speak to her, just said, right, yes, sign here, do. Poor girl was shoved on to 1,800 calories and she'd been living off 800 calories. She was a twig. She was literally like this.
Mhm.
And it set off her eating disorder again. And like, this is what I mean. This is where there is no morals in this in the industry. I don't think of i.e. where these regs should be. It's like people are calling other people out for this, that, and whatever else. And I just think there has to be some maturity levels where we go, right, this has got to come down to, you can work these people, this people, this people, this people. Otherwise, someone is going to get injured someday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't work with people who have eating disorders. I have encountered clients that bring that concern to the discussion. And again, I can only comment on the circumstance that I find. I've either said to them, this isn't my field of expertise, or I've referred them on to perhaps something more psychotherapy orientated
Yeah.
so that they can work it out from a mindset, because obviously eating disorders lead into more mindset conditions as well. It's a diagnosed condition that they need treatment for. So I think it, there's an element of um, people who are looking for the help and support need to do their due diligence in looking for the right coach.
Mhm.
But equally, coaches, in my ideal world, should do the right thing and they should talk to and talk about the
Mhm.
things that they have the skill in, have the experience in, and what have you. if that's not happening, and we live in a real world where there is a pressure of finances, people do want to earn a living, and they do want to do the right thing. But I think that in the longer run, in the longer term, and I've certainly heard more senior coaches talking about this, those people who try to be something that they're not are eventually found out. It's just unfortunate that that can impact the clients that they work with. Obviously, if it was more than unfortunate, it's wrong that it impacts the clients that they work with along the way. So people need to do their due diligence, but equally, coaches need to do the right thing.
Yeah, okay. So I get all of this. I've got one big question I want to ask you, or your opinion of this, okay?
Oh, excellent.
Is these things like Ozempic and
hmm
so
hmm
GPL ones, right?
hmm
What are your opinions of these? I would love to know because I have an opinion. And some of the guys who are out there listening probably understand where I'm coming from, but also understand, my thought processes to it. So I'd like to ask, what's your thought process on, things like Ozempic, Monjaro?
So, right, that's a big topic. I'm not a doctor. I cannot diagnose anybody. I do not write prescriptions. Disclaimer over.
Yeah.
I think with regards to, we're clearly talking about it principally in terms of a weight loss drug and something that people use to assist them in weight loss. In my opinion, it is not something that people should use in the long term to support weight loss. However, here's my caveat. If it is something that people are either prescribed through their GP or want to use in order to get them kick-started, then by all means, it is a personal choice. I believe in personal choice above all else. So if the individual wants to use it, go ahead and use it. What I would ideally like to see is that, um, going back to your point about regulation, that either personal trainers or coaches of some sort are qualified to work with patients who are perhaps prescribed Ozempic or Manjaro or Wegovy, so that they are given the right information over the long term to
Mm-hmm.
manage their weight
Mm-hmm.
through diet and exercise. Because ultimately, any of these drugs, because of I don't want to get into a science lesson, but because of the nature of the drug, the dosage tends to need to increase over time to continue to see the results.
It does.
As a consequence of that, you cannot take this drug indefinitely if it is just for weight loss. And therefore, if you get to a point at the end of a course of treatment where you're still taking the drug but eating takeaways and going to the pub every night, then you're not going to be able to sustain what weight loss you've seen over the long term, and you're more than likely to ricochet back, if not worse, than you were before. So it's not the ditch that I would die in if people want to use it in order to kick-start their journey, but I think it should be done in conjunction with a coach who has experience of working with it. I have experience of working with it, and that the client is given the proper guidance and support to maintain or continue to lose weight over the medium to long term without the need for the drug.
With like your comment earlier with regards to nutrition and help like that, with it being confused and sold this, sold that, do you not feel that it's now being like celebrities are using it, this, and now it's starting to trickle down? Like I had a post
Mm-hmm.
sent to me not long ago of a 28-year-old girl who didn't even need to take it really, and she's riddled with rheumatoid arthritis. That's it,
Mm-hmm.
dusted. 28 years of age, but in her spine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I feel like that again with the food industry, with GPs, with nutritionists, with coaches, we're all fed this small amount of info. And then that info is all jumbled up, and the average Joe can't decipher any of that.
Yeah. I
And then
think,
they think it's like I say, it's a weight loss jab. I can just jab myself. I'm going to lose weight.
what you're describing, though, is a client's desire. So by that, I mean, nobody wants a personal trainer, right? Let's be clear. Nobody wants a personal trainer. I hate to break it to everybody listening to this. Nobody wants you. People do not want a personal trainer. What people want is the result.
Yeah,
So
100%.
by that, so by that I mean like you don't when you go to a travel agent or when you go online, they don't sell you. You have to get up at 4 a.m. You have to go to the airport. You have to wait for an hour in a queue to check in. You have to drop your bag. You have to weigh excess luggage. You have to queue for another hour to go through security. You have to wait for the plane. You have to eat bad food at the restaurant. You have to fly for 8 hours to get to wherever you want to get. Then you have to do that process in return, and then you get to the beach. The only bit that people hear in that entire description is the beach.
Bitch.
People want the result, they don't want the process.
Yeah.
And I think another sort of thing that it's not necessarily a frustration, but definitely something that I have noticed in the fitness industry is that people will sell you, coaches will sell their clients, I have this great 12-week process. I have this great education information thing. I have this ebook. I have this, that. I have this next thing. My inbox is full of ebooks that I've never read. I don't want information. I want implementation. My job as a coach, I cannot do the work for my clients. Whether I was in person or online, it's irrelevant. I cannot do the work for my clients. Clients only get the result if they put in the work. However, my job as a coach or any coach, their job is to get their clients to the result faster. That's the job of a coach, which is why I mentioned earlier the support and the accountability, because that's the thing, again, talking specifically of the clients that I work with and the demographic that they are, they all know that they need to go and exercise. They all know that they need to do more work at the gym. They all know that they need to get out and get moving, but they don't because there's nobody holding them accountable to do that. And that's the difference that coaches bring. Because you can go online tomorrow. I could look up YouTube right now and I could look up a 30-minute at home HIIT workout with dumbbells,
Yeah.
create a space, push the furniture back,
200,
away you go.
200 videos
But
right in front of you.
yeah, you can take your pick. However, when something goes wrong, when you don't feel like it, when something happens, when you don't see the result that you want, when it's taking too long, when something isn't working, however you want to put it, the problem with all of these types of services is that there's not a human being on the other end of that that the client can then go and ask. And it's my job as a coach to help people not only with the information, but the implementation to get them there
Leads
faster.
perfect into my next question. Dealing with the age range you deal with, what are your
Mm-hmm.
biggest hurdles you have to overcome? What is the, like, say, the top three hurdles that you have to overcome?
Um,
Because I suppose it changes throughout age range.
it,
But then, like say, you do a lot of like older people with families still, etc., etc. So anyone really from the ages of 30 upwards or 25 upwards have got families, right? So I wouldn't say they're any different, but obviously it gets a little bit harder as the kids get older, more running around, less time for mum and dad.
I mean, I'm fortunate that both my parents are still alive. And trust me when I say you don't stop relying on your mum and dad as long as they're there. I think the objections that I hear from people, first and foremost, time and money are a common objection. They really are a common objection. But you can usually take that out of the conversation if you have, sales training and you've done and you've been through the ways in which to handle objections on that front. That used to be something that concerns me. It's not something that concerns me particularly now, although I still hear the objection. In my age range, the favorite phrase I hear, and I hear this so often. I hear that it's this. When I've done this, then I'll do that. When I've been on holiday, then I'll start with you. When I've had this wedding, then I'll start a personal training program. When I get 15 weeks past Christmas, then I'll have time to do this. When I've done this, then I'll do that. That's a classic phrase that I hear from people all the time. And that is ultimately just delaying
Mm,
their future.
exactly.
They're just delaying that. Um, I think
And
one of the things that I've
you not find
learned as
that
a
though,
coach,
it's just objections like I don't want to do hard work, realistically.
I wouldn't put it like that. Um, I was talking to one gentleman just last week, and I said to him, we were having a conversation about the issues and concerns that he had to specifically deal with. And we went through them all, and we talked about how eating better, moving more, exercising regularly would solve all of these things. And I said to him, so what's holding you back? What's stopping you? And he sat there and he said, I don't know. And I then asked him this question, and I think this is a great coaching question, and everybody can write this down. Here it is. If you did know what the problem was, what would it be? So you're acknowledging the person is saying to you, I don't know the answer. I don't know. What's your problem? I don't know. Okay, I get that. But if you did know, what would it be? You're inviting the client or the potential client to speculate. You're inviting them to imagine. You're inviting them. And the minute I said that, he said, oh, well, I might be scared of going to the gym. I might be worried about what people think of me. And this isn't what he thinks. This is it. This is the answer. So if you're ever in a situation where people say, I want to start with you, but I don't know why I don't.
Yeah,
The question you ask is, that's fine. If you did know, what would it be?
yeah. So tell me the other couple of things that are your like biggest hurdles you've overcome with like the age range clientele that you work with.
There's definitely a fear factor.
Yeah.
It perhaps sounds, in a personal training context, we talk about lifting weights, going to the gym, this, that, the next thing. It just comes almost a second
Second
nature
nature.
when you do it as a living. Exactly. I talk to people about their fear of falling over and not being able to get back up.
Mm.
I talk to people about their fear of breaking a bone if they trip. I talk to people their fear of, you know, technically speaking, 50 is beyond midlife.
Mm.
If you want to look at it statistically in terms of a lifespan point of view, we have this romantic notion that we're all going to live to 100 and celebrate our centenary in the Royal Albert Hall or something like that. That's not necessarily the case. And therefore, people's mortality is a fear. Very often, when people get to midlife, they're conscious that they might, I'm using midlife as the age of 50, but when people get to the age of 50, they sometimes think to themselves, gosh, I could have another 15 years of work. I could have another 20 years of work. I own my own business. I've now got to get up, present, be the face of my business, and there's some 20-year-old in the corner coming up behind me. There's a confidence issue that people in their late 40s, early 50s have, where they think, I could be replaced. And I hate to break it to everybody, but if you are gainfully employed and what have you, if anything happens to you, your employer will put your job description on LinkedIn tomorrow. You will be replaced within the month,
Yeah.
and therefore, it's not just about um, uh, how you look in the mirror, albeit that people want to look good in the mirror. It's about longevity and actually being able to do the things that
Are
you
you
like.
are
And
you
when people,
are you finding
oh,
though with the age range you do work with, like I'm still working a little bit younger than your like your
hmm
lowest end. So I still get the semi cockiness of like I'm still in my 30s. I'm fine, no problems. I've still got
yeah,
a whole life ahead of me. No worries, right? But really, creeping
uh,
up on them, and it's going from being like this big gap to like this gone. and it's gone and dusted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think uh, you do get a lot of that. It's it's a fool's paradise. I mentioned at the start of this that when I was my last corporate role before I became a full-time personal trainer was for a medical insurance company and for a healthcare company. And I know firsthand. So a lot of people will say to me things like, "Oh, it's okay. I don't need that. I've got medical insurance. They'll fix me. It'll be fine." I know absolutely guarantee you that if you have a problem and you claim on your medical insurance and you get it fixed, you will never be insured for that problem again. It does not give you cover for life. And therefore, you are paying for your illness, not your wellness.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
people think that it's some sort of, we have, particularly in the UK, I know that it's different in different countries, but in Western society, shall we say, we live in a world where medical assistance is either provided to you on, well, it is provided to you on tap. The way you pay for it and the way you access it may be different in different countries, but it's effectively on tap. So we have lulled ourselves into this false sense of security that if anything goes wrong, they'll fix me.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, as someone who used to work for a medical insurance company, they
No,
won't.
they won't. It's a sticky plaster situation, right? Like you say.
Yeah.
Same with like I learned this through my own personal medical insurance. You know, yeah, I had knee surgery back in 2001, end of 2001, 2002, right?
Game over.
I was privately insured. Okay. The amount of questions, even though this was my insurance was in 20, I took medical insurance out to what, 2018, right? The list, I had to send them my x-rays, everything, and have medical tests on my knee to say there's nothing wrong with my knee to have that, even though it was done however many years before, just to get insurance. And then my costs were even higher because they now are covering an allegedly all right knee.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it is an unfortunate situation, but I have absolutely worked with clients who have experienced medical emergencies while on holiday. They've had to be flown back. They've experienced broken bones. They've experienced problems with their heart, with their lungs, all sorts of things. These things happen, and it happens far more frequently than people think, and it happens far more frequently than people think the older you get.
yeah,
And it all stems from you have to take care of yourself. As I say to my clients, you wash your face every day, you brush your teeth every day, you change your clothes every day. Why would you exercise every day? You don't have to go to the gym and train like an Olympic athlete every day. 30 minutes, in my case,
well,
different training is different for different people. But, you know, it's more important to be consistent
hmm,
than it is to do nothing. And I do have conversations with a lot of people who come to me at the point where they're like, okay, a problem has happened, fix me. And it's much harder to fix than it is to maintain.
that's oh yeah, oh it does. So this is really good actually. This leads on to some myths, right, that I'd really like to cover with you. Now,
Please.
obviously your age range. Now, how many people have you trained over, say, 50 plus, right? Have turned around and probably asked, I shouldn't exercise every day of any form over the age of 50. How many people have said that to you?
All of them.
Right.
All of them. Um,
And okay, so we'll break that myth, right? Doing 10,000 steps. Not even that. Say
wow.
six, right? Say six. We'll be generous, right? 6,000 steps for a 50-year-old person, 51-year-old person, 55-year-old person, right? And say going to the gym 3 times a week. How hard is that?
It it depends. So, for example, I can work with people who are quite significantly overweight because if you have taken 50 years with no exercise to get to the place that you are, suddenly asking someone to go and walk 1,000 steps, 2,000 steps, 5,000 steps. The number 10,000, I'm not entirely sure where this number has come from. It's a bit of an arbitrary number,
It is
but I think it's a completely arbitrary number. Um, that can be very challenging for some people to what that. I mean, to put that into context, if you're sort of going for it and walking with intent, you will do roughly, I mean, let's keep the numbers round, 1,000 steps in 10 minutes. So to do 6,000 steps using your analogy, that's an hour.
yeah.
So you're asking someone 50 plus to walk with intent
Mm.
for an hour just to get 6,000 steps in. 10,000 steps is an hour and a half,
Yeah.
an hour and 40 minutes. So I think you need to be clear. This is why I think it's important that people work with a coach rather than just
Mm.
go on to TikTok and see what people have said in terms of what's today's latest trend. I think it's important that people understand that. When I work with my clients, the first thing we do is no exercise. I'll have a rush of people coming to work with me
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
You don't
Everyone,
do any exercise.
look him up right now.
Great. The personal trainer that tells you not to exercise. The first thing that I do with people is usually sit down and say, how do you organize your time? Because if your average 50-year-old, 55-year-old middle management director business owner is already busy. If I suddenly then say to them, okay, now I want you to, in addition to all these other things that you've got going on, I want you to go to the gym 4 times a week, walk 10,000 steps every day, weigh all your food into Tupperware, and stand on your head. Like that's going to be overwhelming for the vast majority of people. So before you even, as a coach, before you even get into all of that nonsense, you have to sit back and say, where is this person actually starting from? And that's the big difference between, going on YouTube, downloading a fitness app, and this, that, next thing. Those things take no account of the individual circumstance of the person and
Every
designing a
person,
program and solution to them.
I love this. Like with every mentorship and I've worked with, coming out and saying you got to do a 12-week challenge or you got to do this. Every client that I have on my books, there is not one client is exactly the same. Nothing's the same. Not
Yeah,
one diet plan is the same. Not one exercise program is the same. It's all custom to their circumstances. So yeah, we bust that myth. Like you shouldn't really overdo. You can, but exercise. Define exercise daily. Now, like you're saying, a 55-year-old, 51, 50, 50, 55-year-old person, CEO, exec, whatever you want to say it is, could be absolutely like 6 a.m., get up, got no time to do anything there. Right, okay. So all we're going to do is we'll implement some more steps than what they're probably doing and start making that consistently. And then you change their food consistently. Then you go on to whatever else. And then if they're taking up a sport, doing golf, right, we'll get them to walk half the golf course without a buggy and do the back 9 holes with buggy.
Yes, there is the aspect of you have to make it work within the context of that person's life. However, using the analogy of if you continue to do the same things and expect a different result, that is the definition of madness. Um, what I tend to start with people is a conversation around. I get them to. This is the process that I take people through in order to get them to understand what they need to do. So, for example, I would sit down with one of my prospective clients or one of my clients, and I would say to them, right, score yourself out of 10 in terms of your health, your well-being, your exercise, your nutrition, your mindset, how you feel. Score yourself out of 10. Now, let's keep the math simple for the purposes of this exercise. But say, for example, they give themselves a score of 5 out of 10, right? I could be doing better on all of these things. I give myself half marks. Right, great. That's a fantastic place to start from. Now, here's the rub. If that person earns £100,000 a year, Or if, yeah, let's use this
It
example. If
must
that person
say 100K, yeah.
they earn £100,000 a year, they've just scored themselves at a 5 out of 10. That means that they're leaving 50% of themselves on the table. That means that they are cutting their potential turnover, their potential income, their potential profit, whatever you want to call it, by 50 grand a year. When I first got involved in health and fitness seriously, I spent a good 5 years of my life, um, struggling with pain, mobility issues, and this is what a lot of people in midlife suffer from. I suffered from that for about 5 years. That's £250,000 problem.
Hmm.
So by scoring yourself 5 out of 10 and relating your score to your personal circumstance, all high net worth, high performing people should understand the numbers in either their job or their business or what have you. I tend to find that when you relate it from that to that,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you not
you've
find
got
you have to make everything
you've got
relatable to your client though? Like I've got some clients who are car nuts. I can relate it to the
oh
car
yeah,
scenarios.
yeah, yeah,
You're,
yeah, yeah.
you're saying numbers, as in high-end execs. Yep, they get numbers. So I sort of understand where you're coming from, but
It needs to be relatable to the circumstance of the individual. I'm just giving an example of it's important that when you score somebody 5 out of 10, you need to then relate the example to, well, if you were 10, what would make it 10? If you were closer to 10, here's what you could do. Here's what you'd achieve. I'm using a numbers example, but yes, absolutely. I mean, I work with people who can't get behind the wheel of a car. So using your example,
like,
you're already struggling to drive. You're already struggling to move. Imagine another 5 years on where you're not actually able to get, behind the wheel of a car.
yeah, yeah, taxi for one all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's another myth. So obviously the pain of is part of aging. Do you believe this, or do you just believe this myth? It is that, or is it a case of lack of mobility, lack of exercise, lack of health?
Age is a case of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Now, clearly, your average 50-year-old is not going to be able to do all the
I've,
things that your
I've
average
just insulted
20-year-old.
half of the viewers here, mate. That's just gone down really well.
Age is a case of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Um, your average 50-year-old will not be able to do exactly the same things as your average 20-year-old. There are things that I used to be able to do that I can no longer do to the same degree. I can do most things, but I can't do them all.
Dancing on
Um,
TikTok, mate. You weren't doing that at 20.
you can do anything if you really put your mind to it. The You have to, again, this comes back to the importance of having a coach. You have to be able to tailor the solution to a specific client's needs. I had one client, she was based on the other side of the world, in Australasia, and she had osteoporosis. And she came to me, and our first discussion was, I'm really worried that I'm going to fall over and I'm going to break something. I mean, she was worried about going out the front door.
Wow.
Long story short, wind the clock forward 6 months, and she went up in a biplane. So I think you have to tailor the, and again, without boring people on how to write a program, it was very specific. I just got her to do the same routines. It wasn't the same thing every day, obviously, but it was the same catalogue of routines that
Mhm.
she followed on a daily basis. She got up, she did 20, 30 minutes of exercise at home in a room with a chair and a couple of really light weights or a resistance band, whichever was the right thing to do at the time. And she followed that consistently every day for 6 months. It was 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, went up to 30 minutes, and so on and so forth. And she got into a really good routine and she just did it regularly. Up in a biplane, diagnosed with osteoporosis. had been to several doctors. And there is this myth that with osteoporosis, you should sort of sit in a chair and not do
Yeah,
anything and wrap
yeah.
yourself in cotton wool and
One of
all
the
the rest
worst
of it.
things actually to do.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, quite the opposite. It's important that people understand from people who are qualified. But then, going back to your earlier point, I have a specific qualification to work with people with osteoporosis. I know how to write a program for people with osteoporosis. I know how to coach them and what they are not capable of doing. So I don't want to rehash that part of the conversation, but it's important people do their due diligence and understand who they're working with.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But age is not, in my opinion, age is not a barrier.
Mhm.
However, you need the right information and you need the right level of detail.
Mhm.
And people need a coach in order to be able to start at the right point that's right for them. Because they can cause themselves more injury than not.
Do
And
you,
this is the slight downside of social media.
yeah. So do you feel like realistically, like I think, from my own personal opinion, even I've had coaches, I've coached with some of the best coaches on the planet. I've coached with Olympians to gain experience on my side of it. But I also have worked alongside one of the best chiropractors in the planet. So on and so on. Um, is I feel people in their as late as say 35, right? Realistically,
Hmm.
I think people from 35 upwards should actually start to take their health a lot more serious than they actually do. And I mean quite a
Hmm.
lot. It's like, for instance, I've got a client or a potential client who came to me and he's in his 30s and he goes, I'm only prepared to spend £100 a month on my health.
Okay.
And I was like, right, okay. So put it this way, long story short, he had the worst cholesterol I've ever seen in 22 years. And
Uh,
and a
yeah.
testosterone level of literally not much more than a woman. Yeah, near enough.
Mm.
But it's £100.
Low.
That one wants to only spend £100 on his health. I just went, that's remarkable. And that's in his 30s.
I think uh, money is an issue that
But
people
can you,
don't
Martin, can you
want.
really value, can you put money on your health? Can you, for instance, okay, put it this way. When I had my cruise ship done, okay, I had a choice. Fly to Oz, okay, and have a holiday for 6 weeks, or wait 18 months on the NHS, right? I pay my taxes, done all the above, right? Or I pay privately here, okay? So I paid privately in Oz. So my surgery in Australia was less than it was here privately and waiting 18 months time on the NHS, right? That's no guarantee. That was just the going time was 18-month waiting list. But that's still 10 grand for my knee reconstruction. Okay. And that's a knee reconstruction. We're talking about, okay, yes, I could still walk, just couldn't do any physical activity, couldn't run around and stuff like that. But when you're talking about cholesterol, hormonal values, which are so trashed to put a price on your life, that's a ticking time bomb. That's like me saying there's a bomb. I don't know when it's going to go off.
I think it's important that the industry learns to pitch the appropriate solution at the price point that the client has. Clearly, as a personal trainer and as you as a personal trainer, we want people to come and work with us personally.
Yeah.
But the clue is in the name, it's personal, and therefore it's our time that you're paying for. And I
And
often
skill set
laugh
and
when
knowledge that's taken me 22 years to go and do that.
Yes, we do have a skill set and a knowledge, and people are paying for that. But I go back to my analogy of nobody wants a personal trainer, everybody wants the result. So the fact that we have that skill set and that knowledge and that qualification is, in a way, from the client's perspective, that's by the by. They just expect that
Yeah,
as something that we have. To
yeah,
your earlier point, not everybody does have that, and that's where
yeah,
regulation of the industry
yeah.
needs to come in. But going back to your point, not everybody has the same available money to spend on their health. What I think is an important conversation to have with everybody generally is, what are you prioritizing? I was talking to a gentleman just last week about personal training, and he was talking about, um, oh, I've got this part of my business to run, and I've got this to do, and I've got that to do, and I've got 50 feet of everything else, and then I get down to me, and I've not got time. And I said to him, you don't value it enough. And he took offense at this. He took umbrage at this, where he was like, "Of course I value my health. Of course I think it's important." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not saying you don't value it. I'm saying you don't value it enough." And I think this is another interesting question that personal trainers need to get clear on, is that as a personal trainer, I value my health above just about everything else. I know that my values are being sociable with friends and family, personal security, and my health and well-being. Those are my three
Uh,
highest
uh,
values.
this is where I'm going to argue what people think are values, though, Martin. This is the problem. We think it as values, as in ourselves, right? As in our wealth, our health, and well-being, and all the above, right? I think people see value as is like honesty, loyalty, douche, that side of value.
Uh, well, those are characteristics rather than values.
Exactly.
Values are unique to the individual. What I value and what you value are different.
Yep.
And that's absolutely fine. But I believe that we both have the characteristics of honesty, integrity, and wanting to do the right thing. Those are things that create our
Personally,
characteristics.
definitely, I agree 100%. But like I say, I think a lot of people out there would value it the other way around. Does that make sense? And that's where,
Yeah.
like Matey Boy, who you having words with, has gone, whoa, hold up, mate. I value my health. Why do you think I'm on the phone to you? You know what I mean?
And and the important thing to get across to people is, I'm sure you do value your health, but you don't value it enough to prioritize it above all else.
Mm.
And that, I think, is the key thing that most people miss out on. I don't even think that, I think this becomes more apparent to people the older that they get, but I would suggest it is common to all people. It's just that they're not necessarily aware of it.
This is what.
When you're 20, when you're 20 and when you're 30, and in that sort of age range, the saying goes, you can out train a bad diet. You can go out the night before and you can go to the gym the morning after, that sort of thing. Trust me, folks, when you get to 50, it doesn't work like that.
Doesn't like
You
that.
do feel it, and you do have to think about, what am I eating? What am I drinking? But by that point, the vast majority of people who are 50 odd, 50 plus, are in a position where they don't know what they don't know. So you, as the coach, have to educate them in terms of, well, if it's taking you 50 years to get here, you're not going to get to where you want to be in 50 days. This is how we have to start. This is the plan that we need to go through. This is the roadmap that you need to follow in terms
Yeah.
of getting
Well,
to where you want to be.
this gets on to my last myth, which is really, really good. Now, especially with your age ranges that you work with, fitness gains, are they impossible in your 60s?
Absolutely not. I have a client who lives in America, and she is in her 70s,
I remember.
and recently went on a holiday with her family to, I want to say, Miami in Florida. Um, Everyone was down by the pool. Out she came in her swimsuit and all the rest of it. And her report back was that jaws hit the floor, because they were all looking at her, like, what have you been doing? What have you done? I've got another client over in Ireland who is now literally half the physical size that she was um, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And she's just turned 60. She'll very shortly be 61. So
Do you find these people who are doing these results, they've had some form of, like, going back to where I think people have to start to take their health and their wealth a lot more seriously, that they've started in their 30s and they've carried on? Or are these people literally like coming to you jack shit out of health, like, I've got this problem, that problem, I've got, my cholesterol's through the roof, or I've got high blood pressure, so on and so on and so on and so on? Are they that sort of type of people, or are they generally been gym goers in the past and have probably gone off the boil a little bit and not done not as much, shall we say?
I've worked with both. I tend to work more with people who have completely neglected themselves for the better part of 20, 30, 40 years. And they get to a point where they realize that there's fewer sunrises than there are sunsets, and they need to do something about it. The matter of fact is that we're not all going to live forever, and they need to do something about it because we're not going to. Your average 85-year-old doesn't live to 84 and 364 days in perfect health, and then it just all stops the following day. There is, if you do nothing about it, there is a gradual decline, and people do start to notice this in their 40s and definitely their 50s and certainly in their 60s. So the majority of people come to me and say, I'm in a bit of a pickle. I'm in a bit of a mess. I'm in a bit of a state. I need your help. And it's those people who tend to see the biggest transformation because when you take them from nothing to something, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I can do this. I have another lady, again based in America, a different lady, who she is more slight in her build. She's thinner and more wiry, and she also has concerns about bone density and muscle wastage and things like that. And we put her on a program and all the rest of it. She now maintains, she has like a 2 acre plot that her house sits in, and she now maintains that garden on her own. And it's literally she talks to me some days about going and cutting down a tree and doing this and doing that. She's in her 60s. Her neighbors look at her as if she's some sort of superwoman, and all she does is 30 minutes every day. It's like it's consistency over time. You'll keep your teeth, you'll have good skin and all that if you just are consistent over time.
But do you not find this is my, like, I find personally, right, the two ends of the stick, and I'm left in the middle frustrated. You get the people who go, I want the result like
Yeah.
yesterday and expect the result yesterday. Frustrate me. I
Mm-hmm.
It isn't going to happen, I'm afraid. I'm not, I can tell you a story many, many moons ago. This is back in the day. I had a client scream across the gym floor at me. And I mean, screamed. And he was a detective sergeant, or his wife was a detective sergeant, sorry. And he was a custody sergeant. And screaming across the gym floor, Oi, Chris! I was with a client. I said to my client, can you hear something? Music was blaring and stuff like this. And oi, Chris, I want a word with you. I'm like, looked around, I looked at my client. I'm like, did you just hear that again? And she said, yeah, I did that time. Right, let me go and sort it. I'll be 2 minutes. Walked out into reception, went and saw this guy. And I trained his wife, who's a detective sergeant, and he's his custody sergeant. And he's a rugby player. He's in his like mid-50s at the time, right? And I'm like, second row prop, wherever. No, he played hooker, that was it. So he's a bit chunky man, had the old man boobs on and beard and all this and massive beard cut. I had my pen in my pocket. I said, right, I'm just going to like lay some rules down here. I said, A, don't come into my gym like that and scream across the gym floor at me. Two, I was with a client. That's disrespectful to my clients. I said,
Hmm.
three, would I speak to you like that? And there was silence. And he looked at me. I said, pulled out my pen out of my pocket and I went like this. See this? Magic wand, right? I said, please tell me what is your problem? He started to blush. He wanted to spit something out, but I was like, come on, just spit it out. He goes, you've shrunk my wife's boobs. Pardon? You've shrunk my wife's boobs. Right. So you've got a bona fide issue with me because your wife's lost weight and she's gone down a boob size. And I was like, just reiterate this and confirm this. This is what you've got a problem with. Yes. Right. I said, see this magic wand again? I said, I'm a, I'm a magician, right? I'm going to have 100,000 women run up these stairs into reception and ask me to take body fat off each specific area they wish to with this magic.
Hmm.
I said, do you think that is effing going to happen? And he was like, no. I said, right, okay. I can't spot where your wife's going to lose weight. I said, if I could do that, see this magic wand here? I'm going to take your man boobs off you. And I said, see that big keg in your belly? That'd be a six pack instead of a keg of beer. I said, I'll see you at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening training session. And he got it. He was absolutely beasted. But my point of this is people have unrealistic expectations a lot of the time, I find, of this.
Hmm.
And
I,
then on this end of the stick is I can't do it. I can't do it. No, I can't do it. Cannot do it. There's no way. Not in a million
I
years.
I think it's the art of the coach to be able to manage the expectations of the individual.
100%.
I used the example earlier of if it's taken you 50 years to get here, you're not going to get there in 50 days. That's unrealistic. I think the other thing is that you
You've
have
got
to be
under.
careful as a coach. You have to be careful as a coach not to scare people as well. Another thing that I find in clients that are, in midlife, 50 and beyond, whatever age, is that I was talking to one gentleman just the other week there about weight loss,
Mm.
and he was talking about losing a stone in weight. That would be, for him, that would be a great thing. And I actually made a mistake when I then sat with him and worked out his ideal height to weight ratio. And I said to him, gosh, you could lose 5 stone. And I was like that moment where I wanted to
Yeah.
recoil what I'd just said and put the mouths back in my the words back in my mouth, I should say, because I had said something that took him way beyond his comfort zone, something that he didn't understand, something that he had never been, and something that wasn't in his reality. And that's a mistake. And, I'm a
All
human
human.
being, we're all human beings. We make mistakes at times. But I think it's important for all coaches to meet their clients where they are. And ultimately, if this is the business that you want to be in, you've got to take your clients on that journey of taking them from where they are right now to where they think they want to be, and then help them, if you can, take them even further beyond that to something else. I think I would never criticize any coach for the way in which they choose to coach
No.
and the methods that they use. That's wrong with me. I've certainly worked with coaches in lots of forms and different guises in different fields, and some have been good and some have been not so good. But ultimately, my decision making around whether I think they're good or not is based on my experience, but also the fact that I have chosen to work with them, and you learn something and take something away from it. Where I think you're coming from is that there is this unrealistic expectation from some people that the coach will in some way
Magic.
cure them, magic wand time. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And I think with rational thinking in place, most people would realize that it's not the job of the coach to transform you. It's your job to
That's
transform you, but it's the coach's job to get you there faster.
give you the tools to do it.
Exactly.
I say. But mate, this has been fantastic hearing your side of this. Obviously you work with your age group, your age range. There's no right and wrong in the industry
No.
to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Like you just said, I've worked with, Olympians. I've worked with, run of the mill PTs. I've worked with, specifics, sports rehabilitators, chiropractors, etc., etc. No one, everyone's trains differently. Everyone works out differently, and like I said originally, every person is different.
I think that I was asked the other day there why I was asked the other day there why I didn't want to go back to working in construction and design. And I said, my answer was, I'm doing what I'm doing because I don't want one more person to experience the physical, mental, and emotional pain and hardship that I went through to get to the place that I am in now. If I can help one more person be 1% better than they are today, then that's why I'm here. Because ultimately, in 100 years' time, no one will remember the building that I built. It won't be standing, it won't be here. But to have come into this life and been able to impact people and to be able to help the people that I was,
I've 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 got
um,
I've
who
got
I am.
I've got an amazing client at the moment, and I have her son, I have her daughter, and her whole motto is to set the standard. Yes, she's lost a lot of weight. She's lost 5.5 inches off her waist in 11 weeks, 11 inches off her legs. It's just phenomenal, right? Um, but she's setting the standards for her
Yeah,
kids, and then
yeah.
hopefully those standards will go down to their kids and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from, 100% on that. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, near the end of the podcast, is there anything that you would give advice out to people to come on board with a coach, you specifically or another coach? What would your advice be?
If someone is looking for a personal trainer, actually, let me start that again. Nobody's looking for a personal trainer. I'm contradicting myself. If you are looking for a result that you want to achieve, and you know that you want help and support getting there because you don't know where to start, you don't know how to do it, it's beyond you. My best piece of advice is find the person that you connect with personally. The clue is in the name. It's a personal trainer. You can go on your designated app store, whether it's Android or Apple. You can go on the App Store tomorrow, right now, whenever, and you can download apps that will give you workout plans. You can go on YouTube and you can get them for nothing. Information is free.
Mm.
You pay a coach for implementation. So find a coach that you feel a personal connection with and that you can develop that bond with, because that is the person who will help you get to your result faster. That's what you should be looking for in a coach, whether that's me, whether that's you. Obviously, the type of coaching that we do is different. So you'll look for someone within the
Yeah,
field
yeah,
that
definitely.
you are coaching with. But once you've got through that criteria, you're then looking for the coach that is the person that you will connect with and that you will engage with personally. Because you've got to, and there are people that I've worked with when I have worked with a coach, because all coaches have coaches, but when I have worked with a coach, there are people that I have connected with and gelled with. There are people that I have not connected with and not gelled with. I've learned from both of them, and I don't regret working with any of them, but I have always preferred the people that I connect with more personally. So find the coach that works for you here.
It's a sound bit of advice. So, guys, girls, if you are looking for a coach, not a personal trainer, a coach, okay, and you do want some quality help, Martin, where can people come and find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And I'm sure that you'll
Yeah.
post out
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
details of
All
my
the
handles
details.
and all like that.
Martin will be
Um,
sending me these details over.
yep.
Once this edited
So
version goes out, there'll be descriptions and links all in there.
great. Yeah.
For
So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, as we mentioned before, I'm on there as well, and TikTok. Yes, I'm down with the cool kids.
Down with the cool kids. So, guys, thanks for listening in on this podcast with Martin Young. Stay tuned for the next podcast. It will be coming very, very soon on No Bullshit Gymcast. Okay, guys, girls, appreciate it. Peace out.